We didn't set out to be an apprenticeship company. First and foremost, a hospitality learning and development partner. That's what we are. Apprenticeships are a natural progression of that ecosystem, but they're not right for everybody. We take the path of least resistance. We make our lives more difficult. If you're going to run a successful apprenticeship program as an employer, you've got to put some skin in the game. There's no way around that. It is a partnership. You can't just send your people to a couple of courses and then you've training done, box tick, we've done that. You only get out what you put in.
If you are standing up and saying, I'm going to invest in that person, and then you don't, the only person apart from the apprentice who you're going to lose,
your employer brand,
their development and their growth within your business. That's really what it's all about.
We welcome Neil and Lucy to the show from Electric Mayonnaise. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for seeing us such a wee early hours of the morn.
Not at all. Happy to
You're
be
welcome.
That sounded very convincing.
I'm not off, Ben, just post me.
So before we go into the reason why you're here, Electric Mayonnaise, that's a very intriguing name. What's it for? What does it mean? What's the meaning behind it?
I'll leave that one for you, Neil.
It is the question we always get asked. There's a number of different answers, from the ridiculous and sublime to the conceptual, but I'll start with the easy one. I just like mayonnaise, really. I started a company, I like mayonnaise, and basically everything that's electric is better. Like eel, guitar, avenue, light bulb, they're all better than the rest, than the normal. That's in short, that's your answer. I could wax lyrical and say, well, it's about something that shouldn't exist but does, and it's an emulsification of ideas and concepts that potentially should have no place but do, and it's quite creative. It's just, I just like mayonnaise. Who doesn't like mayonnaise?
Yeah, luckily we all do.
Yeah, I'm now thinking plate of chips, a bit of mayo. I've become a mayo person very recently.
Have you?
I think it's an age thing. Yeah, just started within about the last 6 months. I'm like, plate of chips and mayo. And it's not it's just 10 o'clock in the morning now, and I'm thinking the chips and mayo. Guess what my lunch will be?
Chicken your tea.
Right, burger.
Like it's like you've gone in reverse.
Yeah. It's like you should move to Belgium.
We digress, as usual, and we haven't even, we've spoken 1 minute.
Okay, there's your answer.
One of the coolest companies I think I've had the privilege to work with, Electric Mayonnaise. Well, as we were talking earlier today, we're talking about apprenticeships. Apprenticeships is sort of a buzzword at the moment, but there seems to be a lot of lip service being paid to it. And also apprenticeships have a bit of bad reputation from previous years. However, there seem to be a lot of people a number of people trying to make changes to the reputation of apprenticeships and treating it seriously and looking after the people within it. And Electric Mayonnaise is one of those. So, Neil or Lucy, tell me, why are you different to some of the other providers out there?
I initially started the company in 2017 or so. We didn't set out to be an apprenticeship company, an apprenticeship provider. That's what we did. And still are first and foremost a hospitality learning and development partner. That's what we are, and that's to the core. And so essentially that apprenticeships are a natural progression of that. They're a natural part of that ecosystem, but they're not right for everybody. And there are lots of apprenticeships out there. So from our point of view, it's another tool, another arrow in our quiver of L&D activations we can work with businesses where it's the right fit. So I think that's the main thing, is we never set out to just do apprenticeships and that's what we were going to do, and we get this funding every month for free and then we take the path of least resistance. We make our lives more difficult. I think one of the things that we tend to stick to and we hold true to is that we started out to be a conduit between education and hospitality. Education sometimes doesn't fit hospitality, and sometimes hospitality isn't great at education. So we set out to be the different. I guess what makes us, I'd say, is like we're hospitality people, like hospitality people through and through to the core, and not just I worked in a bar while I was at uni. I have a hospitality background. Like we did, the trenches, the battlefield, the whole shebang for years and years, right the way through, all over the place. I'm really keen that we prize a good outcome over a complex process. Sometimes people just overthink things and come down to like filling in forms and running themselves ragged, just trying to tick boxes, but actually not getting anywhere. So the process is first. The outcome is the outcome is first. The process is supplementary. I think the other thing that I'm very keen that we do is that where something doesn't exist, we'll go and create it, and where it doesn't work, we'll try and fix it, as opposed to just maintaining the status quo. I won't say disrupt is a word that's often used way too frequently, and we're not that. But what we do is we try and cut our own furrow. We take the path of most resistance because that's the one where the good outcomes come from. And I guess the other thing is it's all about opening doors for people, making hospitality careers more awesome than they already are. And that's kind of our mantra, and we try and stick to it, and we try and live by that. And I think that doesn't make us unique, but it makes us who we are. I mean, there's lots of people who also, have great vision and great values in the sector. We're just trying to be us and try to be a better version of us and a better version of how apprenticeships could be.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason that it was really appealing to work with Neil and Electric Mayonnaise on apprenticeships is I've spent the last kind of 12 years working in-house in hospitality in people departments, right? So I've led them, and I think being on the receiving end of apprenticeship providers traditionally is really hard in hospitality because they're quite corporate, a lot of the offerings, and they're also they're not hospitality people. So that was the big draw for me to work on this project and to have a positive effect on the learners that are taking part in apprenticeships, and also improve the amount of people that complete them and see them all the way through, because as you know, they're quite long, some of them. So I think to be able to do that and actually have a positive impact on people that work in hospitality and are passionate about it, and just support them more, because as we also know, people, especially in the last kind of 5 years, get over promoted based on their skill set in their current role and not the role they're going into. And so the leaders that we get, the managers that we get on our program, a lot of them have never actually had any form of training or development on leadership. So they're put in a position where they have to manage people and they don't necessarily know how to. I think that's the gap that we are helping to fill as well.
It's a really common mistake, isn't it? That you've got the bartender who's a really good bartender, head bartender. Yeah, that's good. You want that because you want them to be like the captain, like leading the charge and being the best bartender. And then naturally, when the bar manager position comes up, great, well, it has to be them. Wrong. It's a completely different skill set, and it might work against you to have that person, because not only are they not trained up, but you're gonna create like a skills dearth in the team that needs their leader, who's now too busy to be the leader on shift. It's tricky, isn't it?
And then senior leaders will then notice that skill gap, and they'll go, oh, okay, we need to do some management training. Right, brilliant. Let's send them off to do an apprenticeship. And then they have to go to college. So they're out of the business even more. And I guess that's our other gap that we fill as well, is that we take the training to the business. So we don't expect them to go to college, and we deliver workshops for them in their businesses. Yeah, it just makes it easier for them to succeed, basically, I think. I hope.
And I think it's really because they get work experience. They're already doing the job, but it's formalising some of that skill set as well, but also seeing what they're missing out on. Because
for example, I ran a train the trainer workshop two weeks ago, I think it was, for a client. We went around the room, there was 8 of them in the room, and they were all in management positions, and they've all trained people before. And then I said to them, has anyone ever had any formal training on how to train people? And none of them had, out of all 8 of them. And it's so common. And that's kind of one of the more basic skills of being a leader, right? But important. But I think, filling that gap for people is key.
Yeah, I had a chat with one of my chefs recently, and their resistance to being on apprenticeship was, well, I'm already doing the job. And my point was, yeah, but you've been promoted and you might be leading, and they are an actual leader, but you've had no formal qualification. You don't know actually how effective your leadership is. There was a sort of a light bulb moment gone off in their head where they were like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought that. And also, because they're going to have a very good career ahead of themselves, right? There's going to be resistance later on, and I think the apprenticeship will give that. It gives them a new confidence, because you might have learnt your life skills, but when you've got something like a qualification underlying that, you kind of got a certificate to prove you know what you're talking about. I think that's really, really crucial. And actually, while I'm on that note, this is to Neil or Lucy. Employers, sometimes, in theory, I mean, Joe, you probably find this, in theory, everybody goes, yeah, apprenticeships, it's a good idea. We want to empower people. We want to make sure that they're improving. And then when you start speaking to them, there's resistance.
Yeah.
Let's start speaking.
Can you tell me maybe
the participant, the apprentice, or the employer? Where's that?
I'm talking about employers, because I'd like to know, for our listeners, what are maybe a couple of the key objections that employers give when they are actually, presented with, let's make this happen, and how you get around that and what your responses are to those.
I think this is a question probably both Lucy and I can answer, and probably from different perspectives. I'm thinking of, there's no getting around the fact that if you're going to run an apprenticeship program, a successful apprenticeship program, as an employer, you've got to put some skin in the game. There's no way around that. And it's great to say, you can take your employees and we can train them, we can develop them, and we can assess them, we can qualify them. Yes, we can. But actually, at the same time, it is a partnership. So what it isn't is you were not just able to send your people to a couple of courses and then you've training done, box ticked, we've done that. You have to put some skin in the game. And essentially it's no different than I spent a lot of my career as a chef. You have to, and I see and I know chefs now who I've worked with and invested time in the past, and they become protégés. Sounds really a bit highfalutin, not protégés. I mentored them and I brought them along, and they became part of our little crew of people that I've worked with and have gone on to do well for themselves. But that didn't happen by accident. I had to pay attention to what they were doing on a daily basis. I had to coach them. We had to have coaching sessions. We had to have difficult conversations. They had to be inspired. We had to be invested in them, not in a financial sense, but in a personal sense. And I had to be generous with my time and my energy, my care for their development. I think going into it as an employer and going, well, do you know what? This is the silver bullet. It ticks all the boxes. Right, we're done. It's like anything. It's only as good as what you only get out what you put in. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting. We do that. We do all of the heavy lifting. We do all the form filling. I mean, this is government funded, so let's not get away from the fact that if the government's going to give you a load of money, then you're going to have to fill in a form or two for it. That's just the nature of the Department for Education. However, we do all that heavy lifting. All employers really need to do is just lean into it and embrace it, and be part of that learner's journey with them, that participant's journey with them, and celebrate it with them and their development and their growth within your business, because that's really what it's all about.
Like you said, Tim, at the beginning, an employer goes, oh, brilliant, we've been paying into the levy, we may as well use it. And that's the kind of really common phrase that we hear. And this isn't being disrespectful to anybody, but because I understand that within a big hospitality business or a small one, you're spinning so many plates, right? So drawing down that money from the levy and using it for an apprenticeship program seems like a good win for a business. But like Neil said, the most successful partnerships that we have are when there's somebody, and it can just be one person in the business, that's really driving it. And like Neil said, that's not form filling and tick box exercise or anything like that. It is genuinely supporting the people that are on the program. And if that falls away, or if it's not there from the start, that's when you'll get more people not completing the program or dropping out halfway through or something like that, because although they're committing to developing themselves by joining an apprenticeship program, so the business needs to commit to them to support them through it as well, I think.
I think maybe it's worth clarifying. So we talked about like skin in the game from an employer's point of view. So if it is government funded and it's not, we're not sort of any more committed to this employee than we would be if they were just an employee without an apprenticeship. What is that? What would you describe that skin in the game as? Is it just an attitude and a mentality in filling out a couple of forms, or like is it more involved than that?
Both, I guess. Yeah. So the support element's huge, but basically the way our program works is they come on workshops and then they have to do project-based work as a follow-up from the workshop. So that project-based work, depending on their line manager and the department that they work in, is slightly different for everyone. So obviously, like Neil said, we can be there and we can support them in how they complete that work, and we assess it and we coach them and we mentor them. But actually they need someone as well that can show them business specific stuff, because what we don't want is like a traditional apprenticeship. It was very generic, and actually what we're trying to do for them is make it very relative to their job.
I think there's a really good couple of points raised here. One, it is absolutely the employer needs to recognise their role in taking on an apprenticeship. For one reason only, if you're going to do it from a selfish kind of point of view or a business point of view, if you are standing up and saying, I'm going to invest in that person, and then you don't, the only person apart from the apprentice who you're going to lose because you're showing lack of care, you've just damaged your brand. That person will always associate that failed apprenticeship with you.
It's almost, or not almost, it's worse to do that than not do anything at all. So the employee would probably remain for longer in the business, I think. But if you promise something and don't deliver it, then they'll definitely leave. And like you say, your employer brand is damaged. Yeah,
you get a significant reduction in turnover with apprenticeships. It's something like 40% pass. That's 40%. There's a number of people to stay that adds on to your other numbers. So I think people need to realise that if you're committing to them, they are also committing to you as employees. And it's been quite a good tester for us, because people that we've wanted to put on apprenticeships where they might have gone, we suddenly realise there's some other underlying stuff that hasn't been addressed, because why aren't they committing?
Yeah.
So it's a good marker as well, because then you go into it a bit further, you can investigate and see if there's other plugs that might need filling before you put somebody on apprenticeship. So it's a total good exercise to do anyway, but you do have to understand the commitment for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And I think the second, whilst the program's running, that commitment manifests in quite easy ways. It's essentially making sure you give the participants the opportunity to practice the skills they're learning. So if they are learning about wages, payroll, rota costings, and then you don't let them do the rota or cost it, then actually that's detrimental. All line managers have to do is share their workload. When I was a GM, I was like quite happy if someone else wanted to do the rota and cost it out, or to sit and look at risk assessments, or to do a food safety audit. All of those things. It's just about being open and sharing, and line managers not wanting to hold on to everything, but wanting to. So we call it a skill share. It's part of the program we call skill share, and it's basically it follows on from workshops and that kind of thing that we deliver. But it's about where you go into your business and you do the things you wouldn't have done before, and have a go at it in a sort of psychologically safe space to do that. Which probably leads us at some point on to off the job hours, but I'll leave you. You're the host, Tim.
Well, the second thing that I feel is important to mention is, particularly with you guys, it's about that project. That project is about enhancing your own business. So there are things that in hospitality we just never get around to do, but they're actually quite important sometimes. And you could put somebody on a project to handle that and deal with that and own that and improve things with people or your processes or whatever it is while they're learning. And you're learning from it as well. And I think it's so important because there's this whole fear like, oh, I'm going to put apprenticeship in and apprentice in and I'm not going to see them. How am I going to rota them for, I've got a 40-hour shift, but I'm going to lose them for a day. And it's just not the case. It's just not the case at all. But what you are doing is investing someone and investing your own business and your department if you've a larger business by putting somebody on a project to get something done which could add value. And I think this is what's really, really key here about where things have changed in terms of, let's say, pre-2018, 19, where people were kind of like coining in it and just ticking boxes. And I think it's really important that we understand that apprenticeships are not what they were, and they actually have a huge value for our industry.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think with some of the standards, the standard and the wording is open enough to allow providers and employers to really tailor their programs to their business. You know, I was going to say vague enough, but I mean open enough to tailor their programs to their business and make it very specific while still fitting into the standard.
The framework, yeah.
Overall.
Yeah. I think as well, another misconception is kind of linked to that as well, is that a lot of people just think it's kind of a chef thing in hospitality. But actually, the hospitality manager level 4, you can make it relevant to any department or business type in hospitality as well. So across hotels, bars, restaurants, you know, events, and like I say, across all departments as well. So imagine being able to offer that to kind of every manager in your business. It's a powerful thing that you've got at your hands, a powerful tool, I guess, to be able to offer that.
Tend not to use the term where very often apprentice or apprenticeship, we tend to say that it's a management development program and the people on it are participants. I think you get quite a bit of pushback from that term apprenticeship where you think, oh, it's just chefs, or oh, it's just 16-year-old commie chefs going to college to do an apprenticeship. And if you're a 30-year-old floor manager or 35-year-old AGM, you don't want to be doing an apprenticeship. But what's great is the apprenticeship standard and the way that it's put together and the way that it's assessed is really, really good. It's really great. It's really what we need if it's applied. And then when it's applied in the right way, it's really good. Tend to avoid from a branding point of view talking about apprenticeships, which is a shame, really. But it is what it is, I guess.
I guess part of the challenge is trying to foster that mindset shift from seeing, I mean, for an employee stand of view, staff as a labour cost rather than an investment on a representation of your business. And I think from the employee point of view, looking at the apprenticeship as not as a prerequisite, not as something that you must do or something that is going to, it shows the gaps in your knowledge, but actually it's also an investment for you, right? It's like, see this as an opportunity to learn, because hospitality is not standardized, right? It's not medicine where everyone goes through the same training and then you start to specialize. Like, people find themselves in roles for any number of reasons, and they're not necessarily, comes back to the bartender, bar manager thing. There might well be gaps in their knowledge. And this is like, it's an antidote to that, isn't it? Because you're saying, look, we've got all your bases covered here. If you know it, you know it, fly through it. But this is an opportunity to look behind the curtain.
Sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. I mean, essentially. And what works very well with the apprenticeship framework is that it gives learners, participants, a set of guardrails and a set of handrails to objectively measure their skills against a standard. And it's done empirically and it's done objectively by a third party. It's not, well, why aren't I being promoted to sous chef? Because I've done the rota and I did the ordering. I've done the ordering last week, and I ran the pass a couple of times last month. Why aren't you making me sous chef? I'm leaving. And essentially, it's you can really give people a good measurement of the bits that they need, the skills gaps that they need to develop, and where they are already, really good at what they're doing. So it helps people see their role in a much wider, deeper context of what it is that they're, the next level up within their career, what that role looks like and what that role really involves to be excellent at it, even if they're already doing that job to just because you're called a sous chef, you could be doing 20% of being a sous chef and 80% of being a senior CDP. But as you bed into that role, it's a sliding thing. It's not one day as a CDP, you know this, the next day as a sous chef, you know that. It's very much a grey scale between the two. Essentially, the program is quite long. It goes on. It's 18 months, and that sounds like such a long time, but I think it takes that long for people to adopt new ways of working, gain new knowledge and experience, and develop over time. It doesn't happen overnight. No development happens overnight. It's not a quick fix.
So if an employer has been listening to this and gone, oh, okay, I'm convinced, this has convinced me to look at my apprenticeship, what steps would they need in order to start the process?
Contact Electric Mayonnaise. Check your levy payments and your pot, as they call it, and then the next step is finding a provider. So there's obviously many out there, and for most providers, they, like Neil said, like we do, that we would do the heavy lifting. So basically, you nominate your provider, and then the provider will then take it from there and kind of onboard participants, etc., which is quite a lengthy process. But as Neil said earlier, due to it being a government payment, obviously you have to jump through a few hoops. But yeah, like I say, we as a provider do that for you anyway. Then it's the commitment bit that we were talking about earlier, is like giving your team the time to do the work properly and the support as well.
So how do people get in touch with Electric Mayonnaise?
Well, just drop us an email. Have a look at our website, www.electricmayonnaise, all one word, 2 N's, remember, .co.uk. Just drop me an email. It's Neil@Electric Mayonnaise. We don't make things complicated. And then we sort of take it from there. Essentially, it's about us opening, a transparent dialogue and an ongoing dialogue and conversation, and us working together as a partnership to develop your apprenticeship. Because if you're a business, you're trying to, as every business is unique and memorable, that's what we're going for. They're not going for, the standard being pumped out sort of verbatim every time. It's bespoke to each employer. We do it completely bespoke. So it's part of us having an open dialogue and open conversation. Drop us an email, I'll pick it up, I'll email back. We'll go and have a coffee. We'll talk about L&D and wax lyrical about all these things, and let's see where apprenticeships can lead your business. But also, I guess, let's look at it as part of the bigger ecosystem of the whole L&D process within the business, and let's work it so that there's the best ROI for that business, and that takes a little bit of a conversation. And I'll buy the coffee.
Thank you very much. Listen, Neil and Lucy, thank you very much for coming on, and it's lovely to see you both, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Likewise.
Talking hospitality, the voices you know.